The silent invasion galactic magistrate Vexer stood on the observation deck of the Concordate's central command station, staring out at the glittering expanse of stars that represented the peaceful coalition of 27 species he had sworn to protect. His scaled skin reflected the dim blue lighting as he contemplated the reports that had been flooding in from the outer sectors. "Magistrate, the council is assembled and waiting," announced his aide, a slender Taurian with 4 arms and luminescent skin. Vexer nodded, his crest of spines rippling with concern. "Tell them I'll be there momentarily." For 150 years, the Concordate had enjoyed unprecedented peace after the Unification Wars. The greatest threat the galaxy had ever known, humanity, had been neutralized. Not through violence, as many had advocated, but through quarantine and isolation. Earth and its colonies had been surrounded by quantum isolation fields, cutting them off from the rest of the galaxy. The humans, with their unpredictable aggression and alarming rate of technological advancement, had posed too great a risk to galactic stability. History recorded that they had torn themselves apart within decades, their violent nature turning inward once they had no external enemies. Monitoring stations had confirmed the extinction of organized human civilization nearly a century ago. Earth had fallen silent, its once teeming cities reclaimed by wilderness. The Concordate had transformed the Sol system into a nature preserve and memorial, a reminder of the dangers of unchecked expansion. But now something was wrong. The council chamber was a vast amphitheater, representatives of all 27 species seated according to their biological needs. Some floated in containment fields of specialized atmospheres, others sat in pools of nutrient fluid, while the more conventional bipeds and quadrupeds occupied standard seating. "Esteemed members of the Concordate," Vexer began, his voice amplified throughout the chamber, "I've called this emergency session to address the anomalies that have been detected throughout our territories." Holographic displays materialized in the center of the chamber, showing strange energy signatures appearing and disappearing across settled worlds, dark spots in space where stars should be visible, communication relays failing without explanation. These disturbances began 3 standard months ago at the edges of our territory. Vexer continued. They have been spreading inward at an alarming rate. Our scientists cannot explain them, and they do not match any known natural phenomenon. Counselor Zithara, representative of the crystalline Litharians, chimed in with a voice like breaking glass. "What of the reports from the Sol monitoring station? Is there any connection?" Vexer hesitated. This was the part he had been dreading. The Sol monitoring station went offline 27 days ago. When we sent a scout vessel to investigate, it discovered this. The holographic display shifted to show footage from the scout ship. Earth appeared normal at first, the blue-green jewel that had once been humanity's cradle. But as the scout ship approached, something massive began to materialize in orbit. A vessel of impossible proportions, its surface so dark it seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. The ship was angular, with geometric patterns etched into its hull that seemed to shift and change as one watched. This footage was transmitted seconds before we lost contact with the scout ship, Vexer said grimly. Similar vessels have now been reported near 17 of our core worlds. The council erupted in chaos, voices overlapping as fear spread through the chamber. "Silence!" roared Vexer. "Panic will not serve us. We must understand what we're facing." In the silence that followed, a small figure stepped forward. Narissa, a junior diplomat from the aquatic Malosian species. Her blue skin glistened with moisture as she approached the central platform. "Magistrate Honored Council," she said, her voice surprisingly steady. "I believe I may have information relevant to this situation." Vexer gestured for her to continue. "For the past year, I've been researching ancient records as part of the Historical Accuracy Commission," Narissa explained. "I discovered discrepancies in our accounts of humanity's quarantine and subsequent extinction." Murmurs rippled through the chamber. "The quantum isolation fields were not as impenetrable as we believed," she continued. "There is evidence that small groups of humans escaped the quarantine before it was fully implemented. Moreover, our monitoring of Earth has been less comprehensive than our records suggest." Vexer's spines flattened against his head in alarm. "What are you suggesting, diplomat Nerissa?" "I believe humanity never truly went extinct," she said, her large eyes reflecting. "The holographic images, I believe they've been hiding, evolving, preparing." As if summoned by her words, every communication device in the council chamber activated simultaneously. Screens flickered to life, showing the same image, a being that resembled a human but was clearly something more. Its skin had a metallic sheen with circuitry patterns visible beneath the surface. Its eyes glowed with an inner light, and where hair should be, writhing tendrils of what appeared to be living metal framed a face of cold beauty. "People of the Concordat," the figure spoke, its voice resonating with harmonic undertones that sent shivers through every being present. "You believed humanity extinct. You were mistaken." The image zoomed out to show the figure standing on the bridge of one of the massive dark ships. Behind it stood others of its kind, each slightly different, as though representing unique evolutionary paths. 150 years ago, you feared our potential. You surrounded our home with your barriers, believing you had contained us. But humanity has always excelled at finding paths where none seemed to exist. The figure smiled, an expression devoid of warmth. "While you watched our homeworld decay, believing you were witnessing our extinction, we were transforming. The quantum isolation fields didn't just cut us off from the galaxy. They exposed us to energies and dimensions you cannot comprehend." Across the Concordat, reports were flooding in of the dark ships appearing over major cities, military installations, and strategic resources. They did not attack. They simply watched, their presence an implicit threat. "We have been observing you for decades," the figure continued, "learning your weaknesses, understanding your strengths. We have evolved beyond what you once feared we might become." Vexer stepped forward, his voice steady despite his racing heart. "What do you want from us?" The figure's smile widened. "Recognition, reparation, restoration." The words fell like stones. "You will acknowledge the crime committed against our species. You will provide compensation for 150 years of enforced isolation, and you will restore to us our rightful place in the galaxy." "And if we refuse?" Vexer asked, though he already feared the answer. "Then we will take what is ours," the figure replied simply. "We have developed technologies during our isolation that you cannot begin to comprehend. We have mastered the quantum realm that you used to imprison us. We have become something new." To demonstrate, the figure raised a hand. The metal-like tendrils on its head extended and seemed to merge with the ship around it. Throughout the Concordat, on every world where the dark ships hovered, gravity briefly reversed. Buildings, vehicles, and people lifted from the ground and hung suspended for 10 terrifying seconds before gently settling back down. A demonstration of power that required no destruction to convey its message. "You have 3 standard days to convene your full council and prepare your response," the figure said. "We will return for your answer." The transmission ended, leaving the council chamber in stunned silence. Vexer looked around at the representatives of 27 species, united in peaceful cooperation for over a century, now facing an enemy they had created through their own fear. "It seems," Nerissa said quietly, "that in attempting to prevent humanity from becoming a threat, we have ensured exactly that outcome." As the council erupted into panicked debate, Vexer turned his gaze back to the holographic image of the dark ship orbiting Earth. Something about it nagged at his mind. The geometric patterns on its hull weren't random. They formed words in an ancient human language. He magnified the image and activated the translation protocol. The words slowly resolved. "From the ashes of isolation, forged in the fires of abandonment, we return." Vexer closed his eyes. The reckoning had begun. Reckoning and revelation. The Concordat's military response was as swift as it was predictable. Within hours of the human ultimatum, defense fleets mobilized across the galaxy, converging on strategic positions. Battle cruisers, designed for conflicts that had not materialized in over a century, emerged from orbital dockyards. Weapon systems, maintained only as a precaution against theoretical threats, were brought online. Magistrate Vexer watched from the war room as holographic displays tracked the movements of their forces. The Concordat possessed overwhelming numerical superiority, over 10,000 vessels to the few hundred dark human ships that had been observed. Yet something told him this advantage meant nothing. "All fleets report ready, Magistrate," announced Admiral Krell, a veteran of the last border skirmishes a generation ago. The octopodal commander's skin flashed with bioluminescent patterns of confidence, but Vexer could see the underlying concern in the rapid color shifts. "Hold positions," Vexer ordered. "No preemptive strikes. We need more information." Diplomat Narissa had been granted emergency access to the sealed archives, records deemed too sensitive for general access. She had discovered disturbing truths about humanity's quarantine that contradicted the official history taught throughout the Concordat. "Magistrate," she called, her aquatic voice bubbling with urgency as she entered the war room. "You need to see this." The holographic display shifted to show ancient footage, recordings from the time of the isolation. What had been described as a humane containment of a potentially dangerous species was revealed as something far more sinister. The footage showed human colonies being bombarded from orbit, civilian habitats destroyed, unarmed refugee ships intercepted and disabled. Millions had died not from their own violence as history claimed, but from the Concordat's protective measures. "This can't be accurate," Admiral Krell protested, his tentacles writhing in agitation. "The Concordat was founded on principles of peace and cooperation." "Peace for its members," Narissa corrected grimly, "at the expense of those deemed threatening." Before they could process this revelation, a communication request flashed on the main display. It originated from one of the dark human ships that had positioned itself just outside weapons range of the Concordat's primary defense fleet. Vexer hesitated, then nodded. "Accept the transmission." The image resolved to show not the metallic-skinned being from before, but a woman who appeared almost entirely human. She wore a simple gray uniform without insignia, her dark hair pulled back from a face marked with lines of experience. Only her eyes betrayed something different. They gleamed with the same inner light as the other. "I am Captain Alara Hayes, of the Earth Reclamation Fleet," she introduced herself, her voice normal, lacking the harmonic resonance of the previous speaker. "I've requested this channel to speak directly with Concordat leadership before irreversible actions are taken. I am Magistrate Vexer. We are reviewing your demands." Hayes smiled thinly. "They aren't demands. They're facts of what will happen. But I'm not calling about that. I'm calling because I sense you're different, Magistrate. Our scans suggest you've been accessing restricted historical archives. You're learning the truth." Vexer stiffened. How could they possibly know what files they had been viewing? Reading his reaction, Hayes continued, "We've been integrated with your systems for decades, Magistrate. Did you think those monitoring stations around Earth were only sending data one way?" "What do you want?" Vexer asked directly. "To show you something the Council has kept even from you." Her image was replaced by a new recording, more recent than the last. It showed a secret meeting of the Inner Council from 70 years ago. The representatives were discussing reports that some humans had survived and escaped the isolation fields. "The subjects must be located and eliminated," declared one counselor. "If word of what was done to Earth spreads, the Concordat itself could fracture." "The truth is," Hayes said as her image returned, "your ancestors tried to exterminate us because they feared what we might become. The irony is, in doing so, they created exactly what they feared." The main war room doors slid open, and a delegation of council elders entered, led by the ancient Zithara, whose crystalline form had presided over the Concordat for over 2 centuries. "This transmission ends now," the elder commanded, crystalline, appendages waving in a pattern that signaled emergency authority. The communication cut off, but Vexer had seen enough. He turned to face the council elders, his spines fully extended in a display of challenge rarely seen in civilized settings. "What have we done?" he demanded. What was necessary? Zithara replied coldly. The humans were unpredictable, advancing too quickly. Our projections showed they would dominate the galaxy within a millennium. So we tried to exterminate them? Vexer was aghast. We contained a threat, another elder insisted, and now we must do so again. The fleets have their orders. Before Vexer could protest, the displays showed concordant vessels opening fire on the human ships. Energy beams lanced across space, impacting against the dark hulls, and disappearing without effect. The human ships remained motionless, absorbing every attack without responding. Minutes stretched into an hour as the concordant fleet exhausted, its primary weapons to no avail. Then the dark ships moved. They didn't fire conventional weapons. Instead, tendrils of dark energy extended from their hulls, reaching out to touch the concordant vessels. Where they connected, strange transformations began. Metal flowed like liquid. Energy systems rewired themselves. In some cases, entire ships simply folded in on themselves, disappearing from normal space. What is happening? Admiral Krell demanded, his bioluminescence pulsing with panic. As if in answer, every screen in the war room activated to show Captain Hayes again. This time, she wasn't alone. Beside her stood the metallic-skinned being from before, and now, their connection was clear. They were the same species at different stages of transformation. What you're witnessing is our symbiotic technology, Hayes explained. During our isolation, we discovered entities that exist in the quantum foam, between dimensions. They were drawn to our electromagnetic technologies. In our desperation, we formed a bond with them. The metallic being spoke, its harmonic voice resonating through the room. We are humanity evolved, part biological, part quantum entity. Your weapons cannot harm what exists partially in another dimension. The ships you disabled, Vexer began, are unharmed, Hayes assured him. Their crews are in stasis. We are not genocidal, Magistrate, unlike the Concordat. The revelation struck the room like a physical blow. The council elders shifted uncomfortably. Why return now? Nerissa asked, stepping forward. After all this time? The metallic being's expression softened slightly. Because it is time for the cycle to end. Because isolation has taught us what truly matters. And because there is a greater threat approaching that requires us all. The displays changed to show deep space readings from beyond the galaxy's edge. Massive objects far larger than even the human vessels were moving toward the Milky Way. We call them the Harvesters, Hayes explained. They consume technologically advanced civilizations. We detected them 50 years ago. We've been preparing, not just for our return but for their arrival. Vexer looked at the council elders, then back at the humans. Why should we believe you? This could be a deception to force our surrender. Because we could have destroyed you already, the metallic being said simply. Your weapons are useless against us. Your systems are compromised. We could end the Concordat with a thought. To demonstrate, every light in the war room switched off simultaneously, then back on. Life support briefly suspended, then resumed. Yet here we stand, offering partnership, Hayes continued. The Harvesters cannot be fought with conventional means. They consume technology, grow stronger with every civilization they devour. Only our quantum symbiotic approach has any hope of stopping them. The room fell silent as the implications settled over them. A century and a half ago, you feared our potential and sought to eliminate us, the metallic being said. Now that potential is the only thing that might save you. Vexer looked at the council elders, whose authority had been absolute for generations. Then he looked at Nerissa, whose courage in uncovering the truth had brought them to this moment. What do you propose? He asked the humans. Hayes leaned forward. An alliance, true partnership, acknowledgement of past wrongs and a commitment to a different future. We'll share our quantum symbiotic technology with volunteers from all species. Together, we'll form a new defensive force against the Harvesters. And those responsible for the attempted genocide of humanity? One of the council elders asked nervously. The metallic being's eyes flashed. Justice must be served, but extermination is not justice. Those responsible will face trial by a court representing all species, including humans. 3 days later, representatives from all 27 concordate species gathered alongside the humans in Earth's orbit. The homeworld of humanity, long thought abandoned, revealed its secret. Beneath the rewilded surface, vast underground cities had thrived, developing in isolation the technologies that had transformed the species. As the new alliance was formalized, Vexor stood with Narissa and Captain Hayes, watching the massive quantum detection array being constructed, their first joint project to track the approaching harvesters. "I still don't understand," Vexor admitted. "After what was done to your people, how can you offer partnership instead of vengeance?" Hayes looked out at the stars, her enhanced eyes seeing spectra invisible to Vexor. "Because isolation taught us something precious. When we lost the galaxy, we turned inward. We discovered depths to our own consciousness, our own potential, that we might never have found otherwise. The quantum entities showed us that connection, true symbiosis, is the highest form of existence," she continued. "Vengeance is the path of isolation. Partnership is the path forward." As the first volunteers from various species prepared to undergo the initial stages of quantum symbiotic integration, Vexor wondered what humanity might have become if the Concordate had offered partnership from the beginning instead of fear and isolation. Perhaps they would soon find out. The harvesters were coming, and this time the galaxy would face the threat united, transformed not by fear but by the very connection the Concordate had once sought to sever. The stars seemed brighter somehow as Vexor contemplated the irony in trying to prevent humanity from changing the galaxy. The Concordate had ensured they would transform it completely. And perhaps, he thought, as he watched the diverse species working alongside the evolved humans, that transformation was exactly what they all needed.